Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I'm Doug Cannon.
On today's show, we preview the NHL Awards and look at the three favorites left in the playoffs while Jonathan Quick angrily chases officials around the ice with a stick.
We'll also take a look at the World Championship as it winds down, the Memorial Cup, Silly Rule number 63, and much, much more.
Let's drop the puck on episode 7. All right, Doug, more playoff talk. We'll start in the Western Conference, where we've pretty much started every week. We're down to 8 teams at this point. I think you could make...
It's very sad for me, though. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm going to. It's very
That's my
sad.
first sentence of the podcast, and you already interrupted me.
It's sad.
It is sad because there's only 1 or 2 games on every night
That's
now.
right.
And I'm getting a kind of a sampling of what my summer's going to be like.
See, you picked up on it right away.
Yeah.
I'm like, I even noticed
I'm
it. I was
also
like, ugh, there's only 2 games today. Although I watched the Memorial Cup. So.
Oh.
But anyways.
A friend came over last night at like 1 in the morning. They're like, hey, you want to hang out or whatever? And I was watching the World Championships. So I'll find hockey wherever it is. Let's start in the West. I say we start with Chicago and Detroit, but I think before we even get into this, we should point out we were both 7-1 on our predictions in round 1.
Well, that's because we're good.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say we're amazing, but we're right below amazing. Now, I will point out that the one I missed was I took Vancouver over San Jose, so I basically...
And I missed on the St. Louis LA Kings. I still can't believe St. Louis didn't put up a fight, but
you look good through 2 games. All right, so here we go. Chicago-Detroit. We're through 2 games as we record this right now. Chicago won the first one, 4-1. Detroit won the second one, 4-1. These whole playoffs, really all season, I've been looking for the team that can take Chicago out, and I don't think Detroit is it. I don't think Detroit's the team that will take Chicago out, but they could do some damage here.
I think I wouldn't have said it prior to the series, but right now with the 1-1 and the 2 games that have been played, I think we're looking at a 7-game series.
Which is the last thing you want if you're Chicago.
Absolutely. I mean, Game 1, 4-1 final, 1-1 through 2. All the damage was done in the third. Game 2, 1-1 going into the third. All the damage is done in the third. I don't know what that means. I don't know what I take from that. But what I do take from that is that they're fighting.
Well, Detroit's always. I mean, they're always a tough out. I told you off the air. I had heard a couple people before the series started saying, look, Minnesota was a tougher challenge to Chicago than Detroit's going to be.
I disagree with that.
Well, Detroit is always going to be a challenge in the playoffs. And just ask Anaheim what happens if you let them hang around to Game 7.
And I said, before we pushed the record button today, I looked at the Chicago-Minnesota series. Chicago wasn't challenged. We both agree that they weren't challenged in that series. So they come in, Game 1, semifinal series, and they played well. Chicago looked really, really good in that game.
Well, they always do. I mean, I have to give them credit. They best record in the NHL, but I hear what you're saying. They came in, looked really good in Game 1. Detroit was just coming off a 7-game grind with Anaheim.
And I'm kind of wondering if they look past Detroit in Game 2.
They've had a lot of success against Detroit. I love this stat. I believe it was Game 2 was the 901st meeting between the Blackhawks and Red Wings. How's that for a rivalry?
Well, I mean, that goes, we've got 4 original 6 teams in the semifinals, right?
We had all 6 in the playoffs, correct?
Right. So there's 2 of them.
And we'll get to we'll get to how one of them got eliminated later on in the show. But as much as I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast aren't really fans of Detroit or Chicago, they're 2 kind of teams where you either like Chicago or you hate them. You like Detroit or you hate them. You're not really neutral.
You have to live in those cities.
Yeah,
for that
much
to happen.
So
if you live outside those 2 cities, you don't like them.
I'm not even sure how Detroit has that many fans then, but
that city's pretty empty these days.
It's pretty empty. Even their arena's empty, which is weird. But to have those 2, with Detroit moving to the East next year, it is enjoyable to see those 2 teams squaring off in the playoffs for one final time.
Oh, I agree. But I think Detroit moving the alignment next year is a better fit for Detroit.
Oh, it is. It's better fit for the league in general. And it's great with Detroit, too, because they have rivals in both conferences somehow.
They have rivals everywhere.
So you've got Chicago and Detroit. That's a good series. The other one in the West, LA-San Jose, has been entertaining, to say the least so far. It's 2-1 Kings through 3 games. Just looking at the playoffs in general, and this is not meant to disrespect the 5 other teams, but to me, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and LA at this point have kind of established themselves as the 3 teams, and that doesn't mean they're all going to advance. They may all get knocked out in this round. But last year, I didn't feel like there was any really dominant teams. And this year, I feel like there are 3 teams that are kind of ahead of everybody else. I want to see those teams play each other.
Yeah, I think they're the three you mentioned, Chicago, LA, and Pittsburgh. I think those are the three out of the remaining 8 that are truly dominant.
And they're different.
The LA Kings San Jose series, again, it's going the way it's supposed to go. LA wins 2 games at home, comes to San Jose wins at home. I still think San Jose can win this series.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they're done yet. I think probably the 2-0 lead that LA had was kind of a wake-up call for those guys to get their act together and pull up the bootstraps, as they say.
Especially the way it happened.
And to me, they're a lunch pail team, and I think that if they stick to the way they play, that they can pull it out. Yemi is playing very well, so they've got that going for them. LA might lose quick, or will they not lose quick?
I think he'll lose some money anytime you chase down the official to end a game, and then the official term is abusive officials. That never gets you a bonus. Let's put it that way. Probably will get fined, probably won't get suspended, but yeah, he chased down the officials at the end of Game 3. LA was a team coming into this season, and I've said this 1,000 times. I don't know if I've said it on this podcast, but they obviously earned their Stanley Cup win last year. A lot of things also went very right for them in the playoffs last year, and then you make your own luck to a certain point, and they are a very good team, and they are a team built for the playoffs, and you have a goalie like Jonathan Quick, you can always win. My thought this year was they will definitely make the playoffs. They'll definitely win a round. Now we're at the point where I don't know what's going to happen with them because I don't think they win the Cup again. But of those 3 teams, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and LA, they obviously have the best goaltending.
Well, I think that if San Jose sticks to a physical game, LA's done. Because LA, I'll just say it, they're a bunch of babies. They like to poke and prod and stir it up behind the play. That's what they do. They do it well. But they don't like it. They're like a typical bully. They don't like it when it's done to them.
Wow.
And I think San Jose is big enough and strong enough that if they toy with them in that manner, that they can get in their heads and take the series away from them.
I should mention you've picked against the LA Kings in both rounds now.
Yeah, well...
And now I know why. Because
law of averages, right? I got to win sooner or later, right?
Well, not last year if you were picking against them. How about this, though? This is worth pointing out because we talked about Rule 63 a couple weeks ago. We raged against it.
Yep.
We said it's going to screw somebody over in the playoffs, and it's already screwing all the fans over pretty much every round of the playoffs. But let's go back to Game 2, San Jose, LA. If you turn that game off with 5 minutes left, you thought San Jose had won the game.
Right.
They were up 3-2.
And I was one of those people.
Yeah, so was I. And I didn't turn it off like, oh, I think this is over. I don't want to watch anymore. I was actually going to play hockey, so that's my excuse. And I had seen the earlier game we'll get to later, so I know that no game is over with 2 minutes left. But this is the way the final 3 minutes of that game go. Brad Stewart gets 2 minutes for tripping, so LA has a 5-on-4. Then we get the dreaded delay of game penalty because Marc-Edouard Vlasic has the audacity to, as he's basically getting hit, try and clear the puck, and it goes over the glass. So now it's 5-on-3.
Okay, let's just stop there.
Okay.
He's trying to clear the puck.
What a jerk.
But it's my whole problem with this rule. If there is intent to throw it out of the playing surface, I don't have a problem with a delay of game call. I really, really don't.
Could not agree more.
But under pressure, he throws the puck, and it inadvertently goes out of play. I have a problem with that. So then we go...
So that's at 17:41 of the third period. Still 3-2 San Jose. On the road in LA where the Kings just don't ever lose in the playoffs at home, it doesn't feel like, which is funny. This is the first time they've had home ice advantage in a playoff series since the mid-'90s.
Wow.
Okay, so getting back to it, LA scores at 18-17. Dustin Brown gets one. This is 5-on-3. There was going to be a power play either way, but it's 5-on-3 because of the delay of game. So LA scores, so Brad Stewart gets to come out. Vlasic's still in there. It's 5-on-4. Again, he's the guy with the delay of game. LA scores again to win. So they essentially get 2 goals out of that, and they win that game because of that penalty. There's no way to cut it that you don't see it that way.
Well, there's the only way to cut it because he was still in the box, so it was his penalty
for both goals.
And
the game was decided there. It's not like this is the middle of the second period and San Jose had time to come back. They lose the game 4-3. Now the series is 2-1 because they won Game 3, and you'd rather have that happen to you earlier in the series.
Right.
It's not bad officiating. I know the Sharks fans were mad at the officiating. That's the rule.
That's the rule.
But it's got to get changed. And you know why I think it will? Because they're talking about it on shows that aren't hockey shows at this point.
Well, yeah, because it's a silly rule. I mean, it's just silly.
It is.
I mean, if there's intent, I support it 100%, but it's just a silly rule.
In the spirit of the rule, I get. I think we all get that.
Right.
But now, when you have people on football shows and basketball shows or Sports Center or whatever that are mainly looking at other sports, but they throw it to hockey and they say, "Hey, look, this team lost because they cleared the puck," something's gonna have to change.
I agree.
To the east.
To the east.
Let's go Pittsburgh, Ottawa, because I want to save Rangers, Boston for the end. Penguins right now are up 2-0.
They look so good.
This is my thought with them after they got past the Islanders.
Oh, who started game one?
Thomas Vokoun.
Okay, you win.
They won.
You win.
So do the Penguins because Thomas Vokoun is in goal. Yeah, you don't even have to. You just look at the score and say, oh, they won the game. Vokoun started. This was the thing with Pittsburgh. They hadn't made it out of the playoffs in the first round of the playoffs for the last 2 seasons. There's kind of this feeling now that they've gotten past the first round that there might be a little relief. They might have a little momentum at this point. They might be able to play a little looser. Ottawa, I think, is a better team than the Islanders, but they are not nearly as tough of a matchup for the Penguins as the Islanders were because they don't have that speed and that just constant offense. I know Ottawa has a great goaltender in Craig Anderson. Pittsburgh's going to score no matter who the goalie is. You have to be able to score with them. Right now, Ottawa can't.
No, and I mean, Ottawa versus Montreal going into this series. Montreal shot themselves in the foot a little bit. Ottawa's a little bit more seasoned team. They got a great coach. I think that Pittsburgh right now is just outplaying Ottawa. Ottawa hasn't found the answer. I think Ottawa's in deep trouble. They play Game 3 today, May 19th. They have Jason Spezza coming back.
Which is huge. I mean, he's their best offensive player.
But I'm one of the few people that really strongly believes in chemistry. And Ottawa got to where Ottawa got without him. And now, it's up to Coach McLean, but he's got to figure a way of introducing him back into the lineup and keeping that chemistry intact and keeping things going the way they go. I mean, if Spezza's that big and he makes a big, huge thing, then they have nothing to worry about. I just always worry about when things are rolling. And I mean, that team has faced so much adversity, and they've overcome it. I mean, they're in the semifinals.
But that's why Paul McLean might win Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. He gets my vote, but he's added injured players back as they've gone along. I mean, he's played without his stars. They get back healthy, and he's introduced them, and he's been able to do that. But he didn't have a 48-game season. He's got a 7-game series to introduce somebody in Game 3 and keep that momentum going and get that team back in. If they don't win today, they're done.
I don't see them coming back from down 3-0 against the Pittsburgh team that now has that mix of talent and all that goes along with it, but also the sort of, the teams that are really good, sometimes they don't play scared. I think Pittsburgh got scared in round 1, and that's a good thing. And now, they get up 3-0. I don't see them taking the foot off the gas. Crosby's not going to let them. I mean, Pittsburgh's got all these different guys. Malkin's got like 14 points now in 8 games. I think he has a point in every game. But Crosby is the guy that when they need a goal, he just scores.
So we talked about it during the first round when Sidney wasn't back in. And then Crosby comes back Game 2, and it was pretty much the Crosby show.
And they lost.
And everybody sat and watched. I don't see that in this round. I see, again, introducing an injured player back to something that was working and getting him into the fold. I see a Pittsburgh team now that Sidney's back, and they're all clicking together, and they're all working together. In Ginla, Jerome looks great.
Dupuis has 6 goals.
So, it's just rolling, right? You got guys like Sidney Crosby that distribute the puck so well that everybody on that roster from number 1 down to the 4th line, they're all clicking. They're all playing well together.
Which, in retrospect, I remember going into Game 2, Pittsburgh had looked so good in Game 1. I was like, why are you bringing Crosby back at this point? Why throw? In retrospect,
I'm
it's
going
a
to
smart
interrupt you
move.
for the second time in this podcast.
It's only the first segment.
We talked about that going into the playoffs, that if you're winning without Crosby, do you let him get 100% rather than 90% or 95%?
He looks 100%. He had a hat trick in the last game and abused Erik Karlsson, who you don't just abuse Erik Karlsson. I don't care if he has no Achilles.
I'm sorry, but I think he's hurting.
Karlsson?
Yep.
Yeah, he is. You can see the frustration on his face.
You can see when he's frustrated and when Crosby just dropped it around him, and then you can see his tentativeness.
Yeah.
when he comes up, he didn't even step up on Crosby on that one goal.
That's one of those injuries too where it's got to be in your head.
It has to,
because it was it's one of those, just by the nature of the injury, it's something that you feel like could just rip at any time.
Put yourself in the shoes of a defenseman or in the skates of a defenseman. I play defense. Hockey is all about transition, and there's nobody that makes more transitions in a game and starts and stops, than a defenseman.
Especially a defenseman like that, who's required to score goals and produce offense too.
Right. So what we mean by that is in the offensive zone, he's going to hold tight. He's going to be pinching in a lot, which means if the puck does get by him, he's got to transition and get back and then transition again. So
their offense runs through him. I mean, he's not a stay-at-home
but
defenseman.
I'm thinking of the injury with my feet always turning and stopping and starting, and you're right, it's probably in the back of his mind.
Well, and this just happened 3 months ago. Like, his Achilles tendon was severed 3 months ago.
And he's back.
The fact that he can even stand is ridiculous.
Are you hearing that, NFL, NBA, MLB?
Yeah, Major League Baseball, he'd be out and he'd be just retire.
He'd retire.
So, going back to Spezza very quickly, I think Ottawa, I know you're talking about momentum. It's kind of like your point with Chicago. They weren't tested in round one. Everybody on Montreal was hurt. I don't think Ottawa was really that tested in round one. Now I don't think they have momentum because they're down 2-0 in the series. They have to bring Spezza back. But the thing is, to your point, even if it's not chemistry, it's timing. And people don't get that with hockey. If you haven't played hockey, it's hard to really grasp that. But it's not like I'm playing baseball and this is our best hitter. We're going to put him back in the lineup. No, if he's going too slow or if he's so worked up he's going too fast, all of his line mates have to adjust to him.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, just before we started the podcast, the last 2 weeks I've been involved with midget tryouts. And it's so funny to watch the guys that have played together on teams and then guys that are from out of state and from different associations trying out, where the guys that have played together, they hit each other.
Yeah, they know where they're going to be.
Right? And then the new guys come in trying to make the team. They're kind of like half a step behind.
I would say it's one of the biggest, it's certainly the most underrated aspect of hockey. And I'm sure it's there in basketball. Think about a quarterback and a wide receiver's timing in football, except every player on the ice. It's like having 5 quarterbacks that also play receiver.
Right.
And you're on ice.
Absolutely.
All right, Rangers, Bruins. One last point on Pittsburgh, Ottawa, which has been interesting. Special teams. Ottawa, 88% on the penalty kill, best in the National Hockey League in the regular season. Pittsburgh is hitting 1 out of every 3 power play goals in the playoffs. So
that's one of those stats, man. I laugh every time. Oh, man, we're 90% on the PK. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means you're in the box a lot.
That is true, and Ottawa took 6 penalties in game 2.
And I heard Coach McLean,
the Walrus.
After game 2.
We're calling him the Walrus.
The Walrus. One of his statements was we need to stay out of the box.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a stat that most coaches want. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I agree, but if you're going to the box...
Oh, look, we're the best in PK.
In theory, though, you have the best...
We have more PIMs than anybody.
The best power play against the best PK is what I'm trying to say in this series. And game 1, Pittsburgh just rolled over them on the power play. In game 2, Ottawa killed off 5 penalties, but to your point, that means they took 6.
Right.
Rangers, Bruins, I'm going to give you a minute here to just talk about how the Boston Bruins made it to this round. And have you fully recovered yet from the events that transpired on Monday night?
Oh, you mean because they cheated?
Well, however you want to justify
That's how I
saw
it. I saw it that way.
Because I've rewatched the last 5 minutes of that game 3 different times. Toronto has still lost all 3 of them. I can't help. First of all, Dave Strader's calling it. I love the way Strader's calls it.
Yeah, he's the best. He's absolutely the best in the business.
And the strange part is there's like 5 minutes left. It's 4-2 Toronto. And Strader is talking like the Bruins are going to come back and win. It's like he knew ahead of time.
He jinxed them when it was 4-1. I blame Dave Strader.
Okay, yeah, it's his fault. Okay.
Yep. He goes, Toronto's got a 3-goal cushion, looking good. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Well, it's,
anyways, the end of that game, it doesn't matter if you're playing mini-mites. It doesn't matter if you're playing in the NHL. If you don't get the puck out of your zone, bad things are going to happen. And that's basically what it boiled down to. Toronto could not get it out of their end.
Never have seen a comeback like that in a situation like that before.
I don't blame goaltending. Played out of his skin.
Oh, James Reimer was excellent.
Even that last goal, he stopped the puck 3 times, went to his left, and almost got that Bergeron shot.
Yeah, and Bergeron's walking through open. Tell me if you agree with this. Once that game was tied, Boston had won.
Yes.
Toronto was just so rattled. Look, the Bruins, they're down by 2 with 1:22 left.
Mm-hmm.
They almost won the game in regulation. Like, they got the 2 goals so quickly that there was still 50 seconds left, and they almost scored again.
Okay, let's play armchair bench boss.
Okay.
It's 4-3. What do you do as a bench boss?
Well, I call timeout.
I call a timeout.
Yeah, you have to call the timeout. Did he not call a timeout?
No, my recollection is no timeout.
I mean, I tell my guys, look, we're still winning the game. I know this feels weird, and I know we're in Boston. I know they're fired up. They're the better team.
But, I've given this speech, and what it boils down to is just what I said. Let's go to 4-2. You call a timeout. 4-3, you call a timeout. You bring them to the bench. You look at your players. Do we need a goal to win this game? The answer is no. So what's the next step? I got to get it over the blue line. Get it out of the zone. Once it's over the blue line, even the red line, I got to get it deep. The whole thing is, at that point, to play dump and chase. Throw it deep, let them skate 200 feet. But they could never get it outside the blue line.
Well, I'll do you one better than, with a minute left, you're calling a timeout and saying what you're saying, which is true. It's so much easier to just chip the puck past the blue and then the red line than it is to put the puck behind a goalie.
Right. And all you're doing at that time is killing time. You don't need any more goals to win.
It never should have gotten to that point because Toronto, I watched this game in 3 different locations, actually, so it almost felt like 3 different games. In the second period, they were just attacking. They had speed. Phil Kessel looks like he should be the slowest person in the world, and he's just blazing around the ice. The third period, they went into that almost sort of prevent defense of I mean, they talk about this in the NFL all the time where you just drop the safeties and the cornerbacks back and let the other team march down the field. You cannot do that in hockey.
Mm-mm.
You lose every time you do it. If they had just attacked for the whole third period, they don't lose that game.
Right.
They just don't lose that game. And now we're talking, it's going to be a game that everybody's going to remember forever. Mm-hmm. And I told you before we went on the air, played last night, just playing men's league hockey, down 6-1, come back and win in the third, and everybody was talking about how it was like Toronto-Boston. I mean, that's how the Maple Leafs playoff run is going to be associated now.
That's why you never quit, man. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's why you never quit. So now Boston makes it. They're up against the Rangers. They're up 1-0. And then we have the offensive-less Rangers.
Well, yeah, this is another Original Six matchup. The first meeting between these two teams in the playoffs since 1973,
wow,
which is mind-boggling to me. But yeah, we've talked about Rick Nash in the past. Obviously, he was brought over to score goals in these playoffs. He has 0.
Yeah, Rick who?
So through he has 3 assists, 0 goals through 8 games for the Rangers as we record this. Mm-hmm. They're playing today, so he will have played another game at least. I don't know if he's going to have done anything. But how about this? Derek Brassard leads the team with 10 points. The Rangers through 8 games have 18 goals total. Derek Brassard's number 1, and Matt Zuccarello is number 2. Brad Richards has a goal. He has no assists. He has a goal.
Don't forget Carl Hagelin.
Well, yeah, Hagelin's fine. He's got 5 points. But the fact that Rick Nash and Brad Richards have combined for a goal and 3 assists through 8 games.
That's horrible.
What more can you ask of your goalie? And Lundqvist is getting upset at himself after some of these games. He had to shut out the Capitals twice to close out that series.
Yeah, but I think he also knew it was on him.
It's all on him.
Which is an unfortunate place to put your goalie.
And I don't know what the Rangers can do. I mean, they went out and got Rick Nash.
There's a lot of talent on this team, man. A lot of talent. Now, their defensive core, I looked at their defensive core stats. They're good. They're solid.
Oh, they're great defensively.
So, again, it goes back to what I said, offensive-less team. They just don't have – they have 0 offense. And Boston's big and strong, man, and I think that they could probably grind it out. This is going to be the typical East Coast grind it out, slow.
Both these teams love going 7 games. I would not be shocked at all if we talked last week or a couple weeks ago when the Rangers were down 3-2, and we both said the Rangers are forcing Game 7 and probably winning against Washington. Against Boston, again, it doesn't shock me if this goes 7 games. It's going to be tougher for them to beat Boston, though, because they're facing Tuukka Rask. So not only do they not score anyway.
Stole my next line, but go ahead.
Good. That's what you get for interrupting me. So they're facing Tuukka Rask. They already can't score, and now they're facing a great goalie. And here's the fun stat for you. Jaromir Jagr, 17 straight playoff games without a goal as we record this. That's counting back to last year Penguins Flyers when all the games were 8-6.
Yeah, well, the leading scorer for Boston is who?
Krejci?
It's Krejci.
Krejci had a hat trick, and I know that he had a pretty
Guess who
strong
number
series.
2 is?
Bergeron's got to be up there.
Chara.
No. See, the Bruins are a balanced attack. The Rangers are also balanced in that nobody has anything.
Well, the great thing with Boston, and they did it against Toronto, and it's one of the main reasons that last goal went in, is they moved Chara up to forward and used him as a screen. They just put that huge body in front of the goalie, and I thought it was a brilliant move by their coach.
It was great. And I've heard people asking why he did it. He's
What do you
17 feet tall. That's why he did it.
He's 12 feet wide, and the net's only 6 feet wide.
And that's why they scored. I mean, that's a shot from the
Absolutely.
blue line that Reimer doesn't let in.
Right.
But he can't see it because Chara is huge.
If an NHL goalie sees the puck, it's not going in. It's that simple.
Well, most of them.
Unless it's Fleury.
Yeah, well. So are you over? You're over the Toronto thing? I mean, have we? It's almost been a full week. It's a tough way to go out.
I was just disamazed, man.
I will say you took it better than most Toronto fans I know.
I mean, they lost it. If you can't get the puck out of your zone, you're just not going to win the game. And I'm over it. I'm done. Boston won.
You don't sound over it.
And then they've got to face the Rangers. And I think Boston stands a good chance of coming out of this, even though I picked the Rangers. And I think you're right. It's going to go 7.
I picked the Rangers too, but if I could change one, I would change that to Boston. All right, final segment, news and notes. Doug, let's start with the World Championships just very quickly. Team USA gets the bronze medal.
And Canada gets
Nothing. It's kind of becoming a familiar theme outside the Olympics.
Yeah, I just don't know what to make of it. I mean, they struggled against Slovenia.
All joking aside, and I like to make fun of Canadian hockey because
Right.
But that's because
we know everything.
Because, well, yeah, there is that attitude. But at the same time, it's the most talented team every year. Mm-hmm. I get that you're not going to win the gold every year. I think my expectations for Team Canada are a little more realistic than every single person that lives north of the border. But to not get a medal in the World Juniors and then to not get a medal in the Worlds, yeah, you won the gold in the Olympics, which is the one that matters the most. But to not medal is kind of weird. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, I had a conversation with the Phoenix Coyotes play-by-play man, Bob Heathouse, the other day, and we were having this exact conversation, and it goes back to my conversation about chemistry, is that I think that once the World Championships start, that's the roster you're stuck with. So I don't care if a team gets eliminated at the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, you can't add another player, because now, like Canada was rolling pretty good at the start of the tournament, and then they started adding players, and now the chemistry's changing, lines are changing, things are changing.
Timing's off again.
You don't have a whole lot of time to practice together. I'm just saying that if you've got a roster, take that roster overseas, play your game, and do with what you got. Because even that starting roster was a good roster.
Yeah, I mean, who do you really need to add?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? And now you're adding guys, piecemealing, and you know what line changes can do.
Yeah, it throws everybody off. It doesn't just throw one guy. It throws your whole team off. Nobody's comfortable. It's not like you're bringing over Jonathan Taves or Sidney Crosby right now if you're Canada. So other than those two guys, who do you really need to bring in?
Nobody.
And, I mean, if I'm Team USA, maybe if Patrick Kane becomes available, maybe, but you are losing something when you mix everything up. So U.S. gets the bronze. They beat Finland in that game. Sweden is in the gold medal game as we speak right now, which I think nobody's shocked by that. They're playing Switzerland, which is a little odd.
Switzerland's played well.
They've played very well. Nino Niederreiter, who was an absolute beast a couple years ago in the World Juniors, took out Russia. I remember I was at a hockey arena when that game happened, but not that hockey arena. Switzerland just cruising along. The future of the New York Islanders, Nino Niederreiter. Mm-hmm. So they'll have more offense coming their way. And then one quick note on Team Russia. They fly Ovechkin over. He plays one game. They give up 8 goals. They lose. He had a stress fracture in his foot, and they knew this at the end of the series against New York. And as they were yelling at the officials and whoever and throwing conspiracy theories, somebody finally was like, hey, wait, Ovechkin has a stress fracture. And then he went and played anyway.
Again, does he need to go over there and play for Team Russia at that point?
No, they would have lost 8-2 instead of 8-3.
Yeah, I think it's silly. And the other big tournament that's going on right now is the Memorial Cup. So that's all of the junior clubs in action. It's being hosted by Saskatoon in Western Canada.
Sounds like a good Canadian city. Saskatoon.
Can you name the province?
Oh, Saskatchewan?
Hey, ding, 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 ding.
I know my geography. when it
Got your
comes to hockey.
geography. The 4 teams playing in this tournament are the London Knights, the Portland Winterhawks, Saskatoon
Blades?
and Halifax, your favorite.
Oh, it's a great name. The Mooseheads.
The Mooseheads.
That's just name our team after beer.
Round robin tournament. The top 3 teams from the 3 leagues, the OHL, the WHL, and the Q. So that's and Saskatoon's the host city, so they get an at-large bid.
Can you imagine if the Super Bowl ran like this? New Orleans would be in it every year.
So 2 games in the books. London Knights beat Saskatoon 3-2. Halifax beats Portland 7-4.
There's a game going on.
Halifax has a couple of loaded guys on their roster.
This, to me, is the storyline, and I get that nobody's going to turn away from the NHL playoffs, but as we mentioned, it's sad, but there's only 2 NHL games a day right now. If you want more hockey to watch, the storyline to me, as a casual junior hockey observer, is the fact that Seth Jones is on Portland, Nathan McKinnon and Jonathan Drouin are on Halifax.
Those are top 3 draft picks.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change.
I don't think that's going to change.
The order
either.
may change, but those are your 3 guys. And Seth Jones, huge defenseman. I mean, you had the stats on him.
Yeah, Seth Jones finished the regular season with 56 points. 42 of those points were assists. So as a defenseman, he's distributing the puck really, really well. Check this out. His plus-minus, 46.
Yeah, that's all.
Plus 46.
Just plus 46.
Well, and then you got Drouin, who I've been watching throughout the season. That boy's got 105
points, 64 assists. To me, he's the playmaker that I want if I'm drafting near the top of the draft. Now, I get why Seth Jones is going to go first, and I think that's pretty much a given that he's going first. He's huge. If you watch the World Juniors, which I think a lot of people did, the actual tournament before the NHL lockout ended, he was the main reason Team USA won.
Big defenseman with 56 points. Usually don't go hand in hand. Another
Sold.
Chara.
Can you imagine if Edmonton had gotten him?
So coming up, what do we got? We got London and Portland on Monday and Halifax and Saskatoon today.
Now, I want to get to the NHL Awards, but we didn't talk about this one thing, the Raffi Torres hit in the LA series.
You really want my blood pressure to go up,
I do. That's pretty much why I'm bringing it up, because I will say this. He gets the rest of the series, which is an interesting suspension that I've never really seen before outside of, like, adult league hockey. You were comparing it to the Justin Abdelkader hit.
Well, absolutely.
This is 1,000 times worse and got him 2 games.
2 games. Raffi gets 6. I saw a headline, and I couldn't agree with the headline more. It said, Torres gets 6 games because of his history.
Yeah, that's true.
I watched Brandon Shanahan's review of the Abdelkader hit and the Torres hit. You used the phrase where he broke the Torres hit down to the infinitum of
I thought
what skates he was wearing.
It was like astrophysicist work right there, and it was in Shanahan's voice, which makes it that much better. But he had like Venn diagrams and like vectors, and
Abdelkader's review was it was charging 2 minutes or whatever it was. He was charging. He got 2 games, and I'm like, no.
But as you said, they used words.
They used the word violent. It was a violent hit with substantial head contact. He left his feet.
For Abdelkader, not for Torres.
Yeah, for Abdelkader. He got a major. The player left the ice injured. Raffi hit the body first, grazed the head, and it was referred to as the head was the main target, which it wasn't.
I don't think it was. Here's why I don't think it was. This guy was suspended 25 games last year. Mm-hmm. He missed his team's run to the Western Conference Finals, and I guess we're never going to see Raffi Torres play against LA. That's what the suspension shows me. But who knows how that may have been different if Torres was on the Coyotes against the Kings last year. Just from his own personal mindset, here he is in the playoffs. San Jose's gotten past the first round. They're on a run. Do you really think he's going to take a run at Jarrett Stoll's head?
He changed his whole game when he came back.
He had to.
He had to. He had no choice. And I think it's a shame that those 6 games were based on history because it was not as ugly a hit as everybody made it out to be. I'm sorry.
The league's in a tough spot because I get what they're trying to do, and you don't want a guy to be a constant repeat offender. But let me just pose this question to you. What if those hits were reversed? What if Abdelkader had hit Stoll the way Torres did, and what if Torres had delivered that Abdelkader hit?
If Torres delivers that Abdelkader hit,
They're shooting
He's
him
out for 2 months.
They're putting him in outer space.
Right. He's never going to see the ice again.
He's not going to see North America again.
It was just frustrating, man. Really frustrating.
All right, on to the awards, because that's the point here. Pretty much all of the major awards. We know the finalists now.
Yeah, we're just going to hit some top ones, though.
It's kind of weird this year. There's not going to be an awards ceremony in Las Vegas, which means I don't get to go to Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, I see why. I mean, the draft's all one day this year.
Yeah.
The whole draft is being done in a day. Let's just start with Art Ross. It's an easy pick for that one.
Yeah, because there's only one finalist.
And these are the ones I like because I can just say, well, it's this guy. And I'm trying to...
Well, this guy had a pretty remarkable year. Is he 37 or 38 years old? I think he's going to be 38 coming up.
Late 30s, Martin St. Louis.
Short.
Yeah, I used to be...
Yeah, anybody calls him Martin Short?
Ooh, that's good.
That's
I like that.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
I coach a lot of youth hockey, and I see a lot of size differential.
Are you saying the youth kids are taller than Martin St. Louis?
No, there's a kid that's trying out right now, and he's really, really small compared to the other players. But, man, there's nobody that can skate like this kid and have as much heart as this kid. And I think Martin St. Louis shows that to it. You can be 10 feet tall, you can be 4 feet tall, but at the end of the day, you have to play the game. And, he's smart. He's a smart player. He finished the season with 60 points. Here we go again. 17 goals, 43 assists. He distributes the puck.
Yeah, and I think your point to just the fact that he's in the league. I mean, he doesn't get the easy path. Not that Seth Jones isn't earning it, but he's a good example. Seth Jones is a huge defenseman. People are looking at him since he was 12. Martin St. Louis, people were looking past him when he was 24.
Right.
And yet, he's won a Stanley Cup. He's won the Art Ross before. And not only that, I mean, he's in his late 30s, which NHL players can play there and still be very effective. Teemu Selanne a couple years ago had 80 points, and he was 40.
There's nobody more consistent in the NHL than Ray Whitney.
There you go. But St. Louis, that's quite the accomplishment, especially on that team, because I know he has Stamkos, but who else does he really have?
Right. So then we go to the Maurice Rocket Richard Award, and it's clearly Ovechkin.
Yeah, and he closed out the year. I mean, we've talked about him, 23 goals in 23 games to close out the year. So
32 goals he had.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his numbers, and we'll get more to him in the Hart conversation.
The great thing for as much ice time as both Ovechkin and St. Louis see, top goal scorer, Ovechkin finishes a +2 in his plus-minus. That's usually a hard thing to do. St. Louis was even. But when you see that much ice, typically you'll see a minus just because you do see so much ice time.
Against the other team's best players, too, usually.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really good. And then we go to, let's move to GM of the year.
Okay, so we got Ray Shero of Pittsburgh, Mark Bergevin of Montreal, and Bob Murray of Anaheim. The thing about Bergevin, which is impressive, is this is his first year. Remember what Montreal was 365 days ago. They were panicking. They were looking for a guy that spoke French. Like, that was their main requirement. They didn't even care if they were qualified. It didn't seem like they just cared about what language they spoke. He comes in, gets that team in a lot of ways into the playoffs. They're number 2 seed. They probably
got PK back in the lineup.
Yeah, that's true. And that right there might be enough for him to win. Otherwise, you give it to Shero because he went out and brought guys in at the trade deadline who fit in with the team.
My vote goes to Shero.
I mean, I'm going to try to avoid voting all Penguins here, but I think he has to win that.
I think he wins it, and I think you're right. I think Bergevin's close second. Jack Adams, my vote goes to McLean.
Yeah.
Just what he's done with that team, losing Carlson so early in the season and losing Spezza. And just
5 games in with Spezza.
You had to put Turris as his starting center. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Quenneville, he's a great coach. He gets a lot out of his players, but he's got a monster roster.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to look at that. I had this conversation with somebody the other day that's in the business, and they were saying, look, people look past that because it's just kind of, you have Taves, and you have Kane, you have Hossa. It's not easy to bring all those guys together, and that's fine. That's why he's a finalist. But not only did McLean not have Spezza and Carlson, they also didn't have Craig Anderson for a while either. So they had Robin Lehner, they had Ben Bishop, who's now in Tampa. I mean, they just kept getting hit with injuries, and they kept winning games.
I just think Ottawa achieved success because their coach found ways to make the team perform, and I think he deserves the award. He's a really, really good coach. And then we move to the Calder, which is for the best rookie.
Now, I don't understand what happened here. I don't know if there's a story I just completely missed. Here's the finalists. You ready? Brendan Gallagher, kind of came from out of nowhere. Nice season for Montreal. 15 goals, 13 assists, 28 points. Brandon Saad, Chicago, great year. 10 goals, 17 assists, 27 points. A lot of big goals. Jonathan Huberdeau, 14, 17, 31 for Florida. Really their only player. That's all well and good. Why isn't Nail Yakupov on the list? Top goal scorer, top point producer, number 1 overall pick.
His team's not in the playoffs.
Well, okay, neither is Jonathan Huberdeau. This team's barely even in the league.
Well, you asked me. I don't know.
Did I miss? I mean, did he verbally assault the people that choose these awards?
I have no idea.
Is this going to become a situation where they don't like him because he's Russian?
And I don't think so, man. I think that's not even on the – because, I mean, he's just too good.
It just feels like he's the one in Edmonton that everybody's going to be like, okay, well, if somebody gets traded, it's going to be him because he's not Eberle. He's not Taylor Hall. He didn't go through the Canadian system necessarily the way – I mean, he did. He played in Canada.
Well, I'd hate to think that way, man.
How can he not be the number 1? I mean, he's not only should he be a finalist for the Calder Trophy, he probably should win it.
I'm not disagreeing.
Maybe not Russian. Maybe the fact that he's a little outspoken and
I don't have a clear-cut winner
ice.
out of the 3 finalists.
I don't either.
It's a wash for me.
I'd go Huberdeau. He didn't have much to work with.
I'd go Gallagher.
Okay.
I mean, it's that simple.
Okay.
Norris, defenseman.
Chris Letang, PK Subban, Ryan Suter.
I think it's between Subban and Letang. Their numbers are very, very similar. They're basically the top 3 defensemen in the league. If anybody wants to go to a computer and pull up their numbers, they're 1, 2, 3.
Key stats: Ryan Suter plays 27.
The only
plus
difference
minutes.
between PK and Letang really are games played.
Yeah, and then it just
To
comes
me,
down
that's the difference between the two.
it comes down to your philosophy. Do you look at Letang and say he had 38 points plus 16 and he only played 35 games, or do you look at Subban and say he had 38 points plus 12 and he was there for every game?
I go back to the fact that Subban was there more often, so he had a chance. I think Subban gets it.
I would lean Subban too.
Okay, so now here's a big one, the Vezina.
Okay, so you got Antti Niemi, who I don't think will win, but I like the fact that he was recognized. This guy won a Stanley Cup a couple years ago, and everybody looks
and he's
past
still
him.
playing.
Henrik Lundqvist, Sergei Bobrovsky. It's tough.
I go with Big Bob.
I would go with Bobrovsky, and let me see if I can pull up their numbers here. Maybe I can't, but all of these
I'm
guys
not even
going to
go on numbers. You can go on stats. I'm not going to go on numbers.
Okay. You can go on
Columbus doesn't even stand a chance of sniffing the playoffs without him. This is a team that I don't think won a game in their first 14.
Well,
in a 48-game series.
Last year they were a disaster.
And then their goaltender is basically what brought them. I mean, good goaltending got them where Minnesota ended.
Yeah. Columbus, I think, is the team a lot of people thought should have been the 8 seed, maybe snuck in there, at least between the Blue Jackets and Minnesota. Here's the only reason I'm going to bring up the stats, because I completely agree with you, and if you don't look at anything, I think it's clearly Bobrovsky. But then I'm waiting for the guy to come around the corner and say, well, Lundqvist had a higher save percentage. He didn't, actually. Lundqvist, 926, and Bobrovsky, 932. Goals against, 2.0 for Bobrovsky, 2.05 for Lundqvist. Numbers very comparable, but like you said, Columbus is picking Seth Jones with the first pick if it's not for Bobrovsky.
Okay, so then you look at the roster.
It's not even close.
Look at Columbus roster, look at Rangers roster.
Actually, they're very similar because they just keep trading with each other.
But Bobrovsky's got to have it, man. I think his team did what they did this year because of him.
I agree, and that takes us to the Hart, which, let me just be clear, is not the best player in the league. It is the most valuable player in the league, which
Correct.
I think that distinction needs to be drawn. I think I brought this up to you last week or the week before. I don't know if it was on the podcast or not. Everything's a blur. But the case for Steven Stamkos goes out the window because, A, he's not the best player in the world, but even if he was, what's the difference he made for his team? He doesn't win the MVP. If you want to give him the award for the best player, he's not going to win it this year because Crosby's going to win that award. But in a different year, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the difference? They missed the playoffs or they missed the playoffs. So the finalists are Crosby, Ovechkin, Tavares. And honestly, any of them win, I'm fine.
Yeah, if anyone win, I think it's going to be Ovi. I don't think Washington is a third seed without him.
See, it's interesting you say that because I think it should be Ovechkin, which pains me to say as a Penguins fan. But I think Crosby's probably going to win.
Well, hopefully it's not a popular vote because I understand why people look at Crosby. His numbers speak for themselves, but he missed almost a quarter of the season. How many games did he miss?
He missed 12. He missed exactly a quarter of the season.
So he misses a quarter of the season. And again, Ovi took a while, but he was always around. Okay, he was there. And he turned things around. He turned things around for himself. He turned things around for the team. We've talked on past podcasts about that. We both think, a new coach took him a while to accept his new coach, accept what his new coach was teaching him or wanted from him.
His new role
on the opposite wing. So I think that was good. Tavares, great numbers, low seed.
He'll be in the running again. I mean, here's quickly the numbers.
But Tavares isn't going anywhere.
No. Tavares, 47 points, 28 of them goals, 17th in the league in scoring. He's the only reason the Islanders make the playoffs, and that's fine. That's why he's a finalist. Crosby, no doubt in my mind, is the best player in the world, 56 points in 36 games. He's the Crosby-Ovechkin who's the best player conversation. There's 4 players between them probably now.
I think Ovechkin helped his team more than the other two.
That's
the way I look at it.
For this award, 32 goals, 56 points, scored when it mattered most, not counting the playoffs, but this isn't a playoff award. And, yeah, Washington makes the playoffs only because of him. And not only that, they're a 3 seed, and they had some momentum going in.
So let's just sniff at the Conn Smythe for a little bit.
Okay.
Got 8 teams left.
Okay.
Oof.
There's a lot of different ways this award could play out.
Do you even look at the Conn Smythe right now?
Well, I don't think we need to look too deep at it, except if you believe that the Kings, Penguins, and Blackhawks are the 3 sort of favorites, as we talked about before, there's a lot of candidates on those 3 teams. If LA wins, Jonathan Quick's winning the Conn Smythe.
Right.
If Pittsburgh wins, I mean, points-wise, it could be Iginla. Malkin has a point in every game. Crosby's the reason they're winning, but there's not really one player that stands out, and that's the same with Chicago.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there's our sniff. I don't want to go any deeper on that because we got to wait.
We'll get deeper into it.
Yeah.
I mean, every team that's left has a very clear, I think, candidate, other than maybe Pittsburgh and Chicago, which is kind of strange.